Questions for Jimmy and Dan. Jimmy Corsetti and Dan Richards are two so-called alternate historians who create videos disputing mainstream history and archaeology. In particular, they've both made a number of dogmatic claims about Gobekli Tepe, a highly important archaeological site in Turkey. In this video, I describe a number of statements they've made which have been demonstrably proved false, and I'm openly asking Jimmy Corsetti and Dan Richards a number of questions which I believe they should answer in order to demonstrate their integrity. Jimmy and Dan, you both pride yourself on intellectual honesty, and Dan, you in particular have shown intellectual honesty in acknowledging errors you've made in the past and apologizing to your followers in good faith for misleading them. I've noted that in my videos on you, observing that's admirable behavior, and I'm appealing to your integrity now to answer these questions. Jimmy, why did you continue to claim in 2024 that trees had been planted to prevent the Gobekli Tepe excavation when it had already been known for years that the trees were planted by private landowners before the site was owned by the government to increase the government's expropriation payment? Even Dan said you were wrong about this in a video back on the 2nd of September 2024, in which he stated, quote, "I do have to disagree with what Jimmy said in the previous video, where he said that there was no way that, planting trees would raise the property value," end quote, adding, quote, "I understand why they would have started slapping trees up on it really quick," end quote. Dan is to be credited with intellectual honesty for agreeing with what archaeologists such as Lee, Clare and Flint Dibble had been saying, that the original landowners had planted the trees for money. Dan, on the 2nd of September 2024, you claimed that, quote, "The immediate reason that you'll hear from most archaeologists and debunkers is that these trees were planted to stop topsoil erosion to preserve the site," end quote. Where is your evidence for this? Please show that most archaeologists and debunkers were saying the reason why the trees at Gobekli Tepe had been planted was to stop topsoil erosion to preserve the site. On the contrary, most of them were pointing out that the trees had been planted by the original landowners for money, a fact you didn't start publicizing until months later, and which Jimmy was still denying. Dan, on the 23rd of August 2024, you had made an even stronger claim, asserting specifically that, quote, "Flint Dibble, Lee Clare himself, the archaeologist in charge of the site, Dan Fallu," end quote, as well as other archaeologists you didn't name, quote, "defended the trees, saying they were there to stop erosion," end quote. Again, you provided no evidence that any of these archaeologists said the trees were planted to stop erosion. Show us direct quotations from every one of these people saying the trees had been planted to stop erosion. Remember, both Flint and Lee noted the trees at Gobekli Tepe could potentially damage the site, even though they both said the trees could have the positive side effect of preventing erosion. Dan, why did you not tell your audience that archaeologists had been saying for months that the trees were planted by landowners for money, while Jimmy was claiming they had been planted to prevent the site's excavation? Jimmy and Dan, why did you continue to claim in 2004, and even all the way to the end of March 2025, that there was never any plan to remove the olive trees at Gobekli Tepe until after Jimmy started agitating for it, when in fact such plans had existed since 2016 and were publicly available online? Why did you not tell your followers about these plans? Jimmy, you even read an article in August 2024 which said the archaeologists were already working on removing the trees in discussion with the government. Why did you not tell your followers this and instead tell your audience archaeologists were doing nothing about the trees? Dan, you challenged historian David Miano on this point on the 19th of March 2025, saying, quote, "Find me the article from 5 years ago discussing plans to remove the trees. Show me the discourse," end quote, saying it seemed to you that David was just making things up. I warned you at that time, in full good faith, not to follow Jimmy's false claims about plans to remove the trees. Now I've shown you conclusively that these plans have existed for years. Will you acknowledge publicly you were wrong about this and apologize to David? Jimmy, on the 30th of March 2025, you accused Flint and Milo of lying about the site management plan containing a plan to remove the trees, and you further claimed, quote, the 179-page site management plan says absolutely nothing about the trees whatsoever, much less any plan to remove them, end quote. But you linked to a random university student's PhD thesis instead of the actual official site management plan. You even claimed that the document to which you linked was the plan cited by Flint. Now I've shown you conclusively that these plans have existed for years. Will you acknowledge publicly you were wrong about this and apologize to Flint and Milo? How about acknowledging you linked to a completely irrelevant document, which you didn't even read, and totally misrepresented it? It would be appropriate to apologize to your audience for that as well, though it's ironic that none of them realized your error. Jimmy and Dan, you have misled your followers for months on these issues while abusing archaeologists who were telling the truth. Will you acknowledge publicly you were wrong about all these issues and at least apologize to your followers for misleading them for months